Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Michael Ball, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And as we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, I'd like to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And I want to talk about this incredible restaurant that I'm completely and utterly addicted to. And we'll talk about my experience, right? But I want to talk about basically sort of how all this came about and really highlight specifically what it is that you're doing. I'm super excited for you guys. And thank you again for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Mike. This is an honor. You've got a great thing going here. We're just happy to be a part of it. I love that you came and visited us in Wilmington and that our food, sunk its teeth into you, so to say.
Yeah, it still has. It still has. I can't get rid of it. So I can't wait to go back to Wilmington and have some more. So tell us where you were born.
I was born in Selma, Alabama. Yeah,
Did you grow up there?
No, I was a very short stint there. My dad was in the Air Force. My parents are native Charlestonians here in South Carolina, and so my dad went to the Citadel. And so he got in the Air Force shortly out of the Citadel, and so we moved around a lot. I was born in Selma. We moved to a couple of different states, and then he and my mom were big on family. Came from great families here in Charleston, and he saw kind of the writing on the wall with the military movement, and so he got into the Air National Guard so that we could get kind of rooted, and we ended up in Colombia, South Carolina. So I started first grade in Colombia, South Carolina, and that was my home all the way up until I graduated from Irmo High School in '94.
So why did they pick Columbia, South Carolina?
They did. Columbia it's capital. It's an hour and a half. It was close to home for them. They could get to and from Charleston pretty quick. Traffic wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
It was very easy to get to and from Charleston from Columbia. And yeah, Columbia was an emerging city. Columbia has gotten very large now compared to what it was when I was growing up. A lot of residual areas have just exploded as far as population goes.
Seems like a lot of the Carolina cities have exploded. The Carolinas have done really well the last couple of decades.
They have. Post-pandemic really kind of just rocketed that even faster because so many places and so many people, I should say, from Midwest, Northeast, out West, all poured into the Carolinas because they reopened pretty quickly after COVID, and so a lot of places families were coming down in giant families and staying. Instead of a week, they would stay 6 months or a year, and then they're like, "Well, we love it down here. We're just going to move." And so, the cities saw that coming, and so the development started ramping up real quick. So it's great for business, though. Yeah,
I love that, man. That's awesome.
Yes,
so,
sir.
Are you in Columbia today?
I'm not. I'm here in Mount Pleasant. Right outside Charleston at our corporate office.
Okay. So in Columbia, growing up there, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
It was just a great place for families. I did a lot of intramural sports. The schools are great. Had a small town feel, even though it was a capital city. My dad, like I said, he was the Air Force, so he'd be gone from time to time and come back. Mom did a great job of keeping me busy with baseball, tennis, played soccer for a brief stint. Soccer, I did not stick with me. I was a goalie. I didn't like standing around. So, when you're little, it's just like, herding cats. It's a big scrum running all over the field. So, yeah, I enjoyed tennis and baseball, and then got into music when I was in elementary school, probably 6th grade, and started to play the saxophone and kind of transitioned away from baseball and into band and tennis, and just absolutely fell in love with music and played saxophone all through graduation.
Cool. So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I did. It was math. I
Yeah,
was a numbers guy. I saw numbers in a different way. Some people say it's OCD. It's not OCD. I see patterns and things like that, and it served me well in the restaurant world. You
absolutely.
see things differently, organizationally, and things like that.
Yeah, there's lots of numbers in the restaurant world, that's for sure.
It's all
So
math.
so after high school, where do you go?
So I went to Auburn. Our school was everybody in our school either went to Carolina or Clemson,
Yeah.
and I had a great time in high school, but I didn't want to live another 4 years of it. And so Auburn had a major that I was interested in, and they were on the academic common market where I could get in-state tuition there. And I did a site visit. I was looking at Texas A&M, Georgia Tech, and Auburn, and we did site visits at each. And once I stepped foot on campus at Auburn, I fell in love with the place. It was just I felt home. And
Yeah.
so just had an absolutely great time in Auburn. Came back home and started working in restaurants. I mean, I worked at Chick-fil-A, ironically enough, was my first job when I was 15 years old at a mall in Irmo in a new mall that opened up. And when I came back, I did some pizza delivery, working at pizza shops, and was delivering pizzas to a restaurant one day, the first McAlister's Deli that was opening in Irmo.
Mhm.
And that's where I met our CEO, George McLaughlin. And he offered me a job. He's like, why don't you come work for me?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this looks pretty cool. And George and his team were really the first ones that just kind of created a passion for the industry in me. It really sunk its teeth into me. And I was like, man, I love this. And so, it was good to be back home, but getting in with McAllister's offered me opportunities to travel around the state and live in different spots and grow and learn.
What did you love about it?
I thought it was the food because I'm a big sandwich guy, and we just made we had the food was phenomenal.
Yeah.
McAllister's was just such a cool concept, and we bled red and green. We were so passionate about that brand. It was all a bunch of young mid 20 something kids just doing the best we could, trial by fire in a lot of aspects. But
Yeah.
we were great at what we did because we loved it and we empowered our people. And that's just where it all starts, sinking into your being. Is when you have that empowerment to run something and take ownership of something and you see the dividends from it. That's where it gets contagious. And we just had such a great time. We were one of the top franchises in the company for a long time. And just I don't know, man. We just had a great time at work. It was culture. And I think what I didn't realize is that thought it was the food, but it turned out I just love serving others.
Mhm.
And I love seeing others succeed around me. And it's just a unique chemistry and dynamic that you got to see the forest through the trees sometimes. And,
Mhm.
Chick-fil-A, I went on from McAllister's when housing market crashed. We sold the franchise and all kind of disbanded, went our separate ways. I did 3 years at probably the most challenging 3 years of my life with a different company. And then moved on from that and came back to Charleston, got an opportunity to be an operating partner for an upscale tap room and learned a ton about beer. We turned it into a destination spot for rehearsal dinners, for weddings, sports, like upscale sports bar. Was just a blast. First time I'd ever been kind of given the keys to really run thing in my own image. And we just had a great time. But,
Mhm.
I had two kids at that point, and my kids, my wife are everything to me. And as much as I love the job, I wasn't getting to spend any time with them.
Yeah.
And so my brother-in-law reached out to me. He was an operator for Chick-fil-A up in North Carolina. He's like, man, there's a spot in Somerville right there in Charleston that is looking for a daytime senior business director. And I was like, man, I never really thought about fast food because that's what I thought of Chick-fil-A at the time. It's fast
Yeah.
food. I really want to do that. And then I went through the interview process and met with the operator and his team, just a phenomenal leader. And I was blown away.
Yeah.
It wasn't fast food. It was an industry. It was a well-oiled machine of development and innovation. And it was just fascinating. And so, took a leap of faith there to leave, a company that I was being successful with,
Yeah.
but the hook was, I would be done by 3 o'clock every day
Mhm.
with Chick-fil-A. And I was like, man, got Sundays off,
Mhm.
can get back to church, spend time with my family, tuck my kids in, have family dinner. It was a no-brainer. And so
Yeah.
it pained me to leave that company, but it was life-changing for me. And we say we get a taste of the sweet life there and never going back.
Mhm.
That you just without elaborating too much, time is the most precious commodity that we have in our lives. Our lives go by so quick in the blink. And so those times, especially with your children, go by, you just don't get it back.
Mhm.
And so it was just so rewarding to be able to focus on being a dad and a better husband and just a leader within my household instead of just in the restaurant field.
Yeah. And when you're absentee, right, all kinds of things can happen. Wheels fall off the bus, the whole thing. And it's like you got to be there, man. It's a big deal. I took a self-imposed hiatus in 2014 and left my radio shows to go chase my kids around in high school. And I've never regretted it. I'll never regret it. It was
Yeah.
the best thing I possibly could have done. The radio show part with the real estate company and the mortgage company and all the stuff I had going on, the radio part was the part that was pulling me away from being able to see them and be at
Right.
their events and all, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I totally get it. I mean, that's one of the best decisions you could have possibly made. And you'll see the dividends one of these days. I promise you, you will.
Yeah.
So besides the fact that you were happier, you know what I mean? But you'll see the dividends in your kids. I guarantee it. Let me back up for 1 second. There's one question I meant to ask you, and I
Yeah.
got all wrapped up. And you're kind of a magnetic guy, and I love listening to you talk about your life story.
Right.
Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
So outside of my parents, it was my band director in high school, Tim Franklin. There's a movie called Mr. Holland's Opus with
Yep,
Richard Travis. It's a phenomenal movie, whether you
one of
like
my
music.
favorite movies.
Yeah, it's inspirational. It really is. I got, little goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah,
But he was that kind of leader. I mean, I was very fortunate enough. We were a nationally ranked band. We got to tour all around the country. We went to nationals up in Indianapolis, got to march in what was the Hoosier Dome way back then. And then it was like the
wow.
RCA. And now I don't know what it's called now, Lucas Oil Field or
Lucas
something.
Oil Stadium. Yeah,
Yeah, Lucas Oil Stadium. Just amazing life experiences. But all the fun stuff aside, he poured into us about life.
yeah.
And just that was my first kind of snapshot into the leadership world. I was nominated as band captain, and and sectional leaders, and he just poured into us and taught us about how to do hard things, how to take personal ownership, how to minimize excuses, like all these things that a lot of times kids aren't exposed to. And
Yeah.
so he really was just very influential in my life. When my dad went to the Persian Gulf, to the Gulf War, he was gone for a while. And
Mhm.
he really wrapped his arms around me, took me out to breakfast. He was just there for me in a very difficult time for our family.
Yeah.
Uh, and just a wonderful man.
Yeah.
He never ever forget him. He is a very big part of my young life.
Isn't that cool how somebody comes along and they don't have to do it? They don't
Mhm.
have to make the time for you, but they do.
Yeah.
It's a real example of something we talk about a lot on this podcast, and we call it paying it forward. And, I've had people, mentors that have pulled me aside and said, young man, you're going at this all wrong. You need to go that way, not this way. Right.
Right.
And to my credit, I listened to them and I went that way, and I've never regretted it. Right. And
Yeah.
so to this day, in honor of them, when somebody needs something, when somebody needs advice, if somebody, right, I'm the first one to step up and say, hey, I'll help you. Right.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
don't look for anything in return. I just do it in honor of them because that's what life's about. Right. It's about helping others. And one of the things I was sharing with you before we started this was your team brags about you, and they brag about you because you lead by example. And I was encouraging you to continue to do that, which I know you will anyway. I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledged you because I wanted you to know that's a big part of who you are, and it's a big part of you leading that group. So I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt. So let's go back.
Yeah,
So
that's
you're at
fine.
Chick-fil-A
I love hearing it.
and you're getting time, right, with your family and that kind of thing. At some point, you make the decision did you start Vicious Biscuit, or was it something where they started it and then they hired you? How did that happen?
So George McAlister, our CEO, he was trying to create a biscuit concept.
Okay.
He'd opened numerous restaurants. He's very diversified guy, man of the world. He was trying to build this concept out, and he connected with a local chef and caterer here, Michael Greeley, who's our founder. He had a really awesome name, Vicious Biscuit. George read
Yeah.
a write up in the city paper on him by a local food critic in Raskin, and he was just very piqued his interest. Like, man, that's a pretty cool name.
I love
So he
that name.
contacted Mike. Yeah, Mike's like, I'm trying to do a food truck, and George's like, well, I do brick and mortar. You got a great name. I'd love to taste your food. And so they connected. George put him up in test kitchens, and they, over the course of about a year, with another one of his business partners, they built out this great menu. They got a really cool spot here in Mount Pleasant, got a great deal on prime real estate, and opened up in December 22nd of 2018. And so they just opened to just wild success right off the rip. And I connected with George. It was October of 2019. He connected with my wife, who had also worked with us at McAlister's Deli. That's how I met my wife, was through
Right.
McAlister's. That's how you meet your loved ones a lot of times.
That's right.
And the bank that she works at was building his house, and he was like, "Oh man, Sarah, I haven't talked to you in forever. How's Mike doing?" And so he reconnected with me, and he was like, "Man, George, I haven't seen you in a long time. What you got going on?" And he told me about Vicious Biscuit, and he asked me if I would go take a look at it. And so I went in and did a couple visits, took the family, and I was just blown away at just all of it. The branding, the food, the ease of operations. I've been in the industry almost 35 years. And so when I go to a restaurant, I kind of ruin it for others sometimes. It's like a pilot watching Top Gun. They're like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
So I go and I'm immediately looking for cobwebs. I look at throughput. I look at people in the corner on their cell phones. I look at, menu pricing, everything. And I was just blown away. Everything just made sense. And I told him, I was like, George, you're sitting on a gold mine here. This place is great. I haven't seen as much enthusiasm around the brand since we did McAlister's a long time ago. And I was like, what do you need from me? And he's like, I need an operator. I need someone to come in and get culture, systems, processes. And I was like, man, I'm with Chick-fil-A, man. I got a good thing going on here. And he said, we went our separate ways, then we regrouped again a couple months later and talked again about it. And I had a lot of healthy discussions with Sarah, my wife, because we're a team and everything. And we kind of looked at everything. And as much as I love Chick-fil-A, this was an opportunity to really put my stamp on something new and create something from ground up, which I'd never done before.
Yeah.
And to re-partner with George, who I admired. I mean, he launched me into this career. He was a catalyst for me becoming the man I am today. And so, we took a leap of faith and said, yeah, man, let's do it. And 3 weeks after I came on, COVID hit.
Wow. And your timing's perfect.
I know, right? I just started. See, when I come into a new spot too, I don't come in gangbusters. I try and build relationships. I ask a lot of questions. I write a lot of stuff down and then try and formulate kind of a big fish to small fish action plan.
Yeah.
And that immediately got backburnered.
Yeah.
But like I said, serendipitously, I just come from Chick-fil-A. And so I was like, I got this. And so we went and bought cones from Lowe's, and we had this like U-shaped parking lot in Mount Pleasant. And so we put cones out there, and we got some handhelds from our POS company, Toast. And we adopted kind of the Chick-fil-A model for a spell where you drove up, placed an order on one side, picked it up on the other. And so kept us float until we got back open. Ironically enough, 50% capacity on Mother's Day weekend.
Wow.
Arguably one of the most challenging operational days of my life.
No kidding.
We got through it because we had great people. I was even somehow fortunate enough to convince my wife to come in and help us and work on Mother's Day.
Oh, wow.
So
Sarah's a champion, man.
She's my rock, man. She does everything. I mean, she's incredible. That's a whole other podcast I can talk about. Sarah, I don't know, man. It just having something that I could really call my own and be a part of and help really develop and do things the right way, and just take all of the great things that I had learned at Chick-fil-A and through my other experiences, and also the things that I learned what not to do for those 3 years of my most challenging time, and really just build this thing out. And that was, we opened Somerville, our second location, in July of 2020, smack dab in the middle of COVID. Wow. And we opened to a line out the door. People just wanted comfort food. They wanted to come in and have hospitality. And we've been thriving ever since, strategically in different markets to try different things.
Yeah.
And the fascinating part with me, George and I were talking a lot. And I was like, George, don't franchise. Let's do the operating partner, kind of like a Chick-fil-A type thing where you'll have one or two stores, and that way they can do it well. And because I just come from Chick-fil-A, and I look back now, I'm like, that was obviously recency bias. But we got absolutely inundated with franchise requests during the pandemic because we had so many people from West Virginia, Northern Virginia, Alaska, California, New York, Boston. The Midwest was a huge portion because they all funneled down to South Carolina anyways. And so I told him, I was like, George, you're probably right. We need to franchise. If we want to get this out to all these people, this is the best way to do it. We just got to do it right.
Okay. So you decide, so you start at Mount Pleasant, you go to Somerville, and you start opening up these corporate stores, right?
Right.
And then at some point, and you're talking about franchising, but at some point you pull the trigger and decide to go forward. What ultimately made you guys decide to do that? Was that
part of it was that for me, just from my 2 cents that I was able to put in for George to hear, was that we were finally comfortable from a culture standpoint.
Yeah.
We used the pandemic to kind of reassess all things culture. We didn't really have, our culture was kind of inadvertently created with what we just had.
Right.
We never put focus into it yet because we just weren't there because of all the chaos of supply chain and staffing and just all the stuff. And so I kind of stepped back and looked at it from 10,000 feet up and I said, all right, if we're going to do this, it's got to start with our people first. And so we basically we separated with a lot of team members and leadership. We re-onboarded ones that we thought were a good kind of core value fit. We established core values, first of all, who we wanted to be, how we wanted to do it. We re-onboarded the ones that we thought fit that mold. Then we retrained our leaders on.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.